talk about this topic called Get Better at Refactoring. Before that, I'll introduce myself a bit. Oops, a bit too fast. So my name is Stanley. I live in Singapore. I grew up in Singapore. I work in a small company called Alt-E, and at there I'm a software development coach, mentor. What does that mean? I spend a lot of time helping organizations to looking for better ways to reduce the cost of change. What does that mean? If it takes 1 month or even 2 months for you to be able to deliver something to validate in the market, that's probably taking a bit too long. So we'll be looking at management processes, organization structure, technical practices to help reduce that cycle time to hopefully 1 week or even lesser. And part of that has to do with topics on management and topics on technical. What I'm going to share today or now is something that I've been spending quite a lot of time on in the past 1 or 2 years, experimenting different ways to help teams to learn how to reduce the cost of change at a technical level. So I've been in the software development industry for 14 years now. Started in 2004, being a full-time developer working on Java, .NET, and in the last 6 to 8 years, I've shifted myself into teaching others or coaching others on technical practices and organization change. I'm also a contributor, a volunteer in the Agile community in Singapore. So if you are interested to find out more on the community, you can go to agileSingapore.org. Hope this clicker works. Okay. 4 things I'm going to talk about today, structured. First, I'm going to illustrate the problem, building up the motivations of why refactoring. The second is a bit on 101 refactoring, what is it about. I will spend quite a lot of time on doing a live demo, and also at the end on the tips. Some tips to help how to get better at refactoring. So look at this animation. I'm going to replay it back. Okay, so I'm going backwards again. Okay, let me control it directly. So this piece of code comes from one of the public trainings I gave. I gave a lot of technical practices like XP practices, refactoring, TDD, technical trainings. This training is a 5-day training where we get a team of people of like 8 people together and then work for 1 iteration to deliver something. And the application domain is about personalized email. You can think of it as something like a MailChimp kind of application. And this is a code in mail controller, which is responsible for sending email. This code, over 5 days, let me replay the animation again. Over 5 days, it grew from 4 lines to 14 to 17, and gradually 23, 26, 34, or 33. When you see this evolution, what does it remind you of? Does it seem familiar? This evolution. So this has been so familiar with me because I've been to a lot of companies, and I do see after you've been to many companies, you will see certain patterns, the challenges that they encounter, and you notice some similarities in those challenges. And from these challenges, you can derive some sort of pattern, and usually this sort of pattern has certain influencing factors, and usually some ways of dealing with it. You may not solve it perfectly. So this remains a puzzle to me, a mystery to me, even till this day, after 6 years of discovering in companies. And I have some findings I want to share with you in this session. So, in one of the story is, one of the cases 2 years ago, I was in a team. I joined a team. They wanted me to help them learn more about working better with legacy code. So, I joined our team. They have some user stories to develop. One of the story is changing the footer of the website. And this website has a few kind of like similar websites, but it's for different region. The footer looks the same. And the item is about changing, I think it's revising one of the logos or adding one of the sponsor logos at the footer. I thought it should be simple, right? So we went in and then look at the code. And then it looks not very straightforward because it is an old a .NET application. It's written in C#, and that piece of code was written probably more than 8 to 10 years ago when the application is still ASP. So there isn't a rendering template engine at that time. So at that time, the early pioneer developers, they developed this template engine. And there is a lot of replace, string dot replace over there. So we thought, this looks like a piece of code to change, HTML, and this HTML code is in the code behind. And we just change it and then run it. And I thought that, oh, it looks fine. But when we check with other regions of the website, it's not changed. What does that mean? Duplicate code. There is some duplication. So we went to, we look at, okay, duplication, let's look at other regions of the site. Yes, there is duplication, not one, but also two. And as we look further, we thought, this is the learning opportunity. Instead of just fixing the codes at different duplication and remain as it is, a good developer would use this chance to remove the duplication, right? We thought, yes, this is what we should do. And we begin the journey on that. As we begin the journey on that, we thought of, that ASP website application is now, it's still a website application. It's using .NET framework. And in .NET framework, you can link in Razor engine. And we can use Razor engine to do that templating. So we can remove the duplication from there. As we try to do that, we meet problems after problems, like the dependencies. It's not that easy to mix in because it is also dependent on some other DLLs that is shared from the website itself. So in all, it took us 3 days. 3 days to remove the duplication and get a footer out. To change the footer. It's like I was describing to the senior developer. I'm kind of like coaching him. Said like, no, this feels like you are in a field of mines. You walk, and if you're not careful, you step on the mine. And then you realize that, okay, the mine is over there. You try to maybe fix yourself or recover yourself, and then you walk a few more steps, and then you realize that there's more mines. Sometimes you know that the mine is in front and you want to fix it, like fixing the duplication, and that reveals some other mines surrounding. I'm not sure if you've been through this journey when you try to improve the code. Yeah. And this can be very frustrating. So this is kind of my life for the last 5 years. And some people call it, I'm a bit weird because I like this kind of environment. Because there's a lot of challenges over there. And over time, I noticed there is this dynamic inside common in many companies. So I'm going to show a diagram, and this diagram contains variables and relationships. This is the amount of bad code. I don't mean literally bad. I mean this bad means like there are duplication, it's hard to read, the names are not meaningful, and so on and so forth. Or maybe you use the global variables as well. If you have the more bad code, it increases the number of bugs. Agree? Increases the number of bugs. The more bugs you have, what will happen? More tickets, you also spend more time fixing the bugs. If you spend more time fixing the bugs, what will happen? You panic. Oh no, we cannot deliver as much as what we say. When you panic, what do developers use? They use their secret toolbox. Quick hacks. Maybe let me just put one more if statements here, where there's already a nested ifs. Maybe this parameter has already 10 parameters. If I just add one more parameter, no, it will work. Let me just do that. So you have more quick hacks, what will happen? Increase the amount of bad code. Welcome to the vicious cycle of development. And I've seen over many years that I'm so kind of like, previously I was quite discouraged myself as well. I thought there is no way out. Is this development? No, is this how software development is? I thought so, but later I realized that it's not true. There are ways out of that, which I'll come to that later. But many people, developers who are just graduated and then started on development, they went into firefighting and this vicious cycle. They say that, no, why am I still developing when I'm just serving the bugs, serving the defects? And gradually they lose interest and out of software development. I think it's a waste, and we need to teach them there are better ways of dealing with that. Sometimes this will, a circle on a relationship means opposite dynamic. It will, the more bad code, amount of bad code we have, it will reduce the motivation of developers, and that itself, when the motivation of developers reduces, it will increase the amount of bad code. So this is an example of causal loop diagram. You can look further into what's this, and this is especially useful to illustrate, to communicate the situation we are in. We call this systems thinking. It's related to systems thinking. In a complex environment like software development, there is no any problem will never be, well, most of the time it's never caused by only one cause. There are many influencing factors. It's only when we discover what are the influencing factors, then we can solve the problems better. So I've seen also companies where, when you just started 10 years ago, just a small company, a few people starting up the company, you go very fast. On the y-axis is your requirements, the x-axis is your time. It takes very short time to get the requirements done. And then you validate with the customer and so on. And over time, it gets a bit slower and slower and slower. You build on top, some people call the legacy code. No, legacy code doesn't mean like legacy languages like not Java. Like COBOL or mainframe systems. When I mean legacy codes, in fact, there is a definition of legacy codes in 2004 written by Michael Feathers. It says legacy code is you have codes without unit tests, without automated unit tests. As long as there is some way of automation that verifies whether your application is working, behave correctly, then you are at this moment writing legacy codes. I've seen many cases where the team work on an application for a legacy system for and it's very hard to deal with. They try to manage the, convince the management, please, let's just use Vue.js on this UI part, and it will be very easy and straightforward to add more features later. And then after some time, the management, okay, fine, go. Give you 3 months. 3 months time, at the end of 3 months time, the Vue.js becomes another legacy code. and they couldn't replace that with the legacy application yet. They're still far away from it. So if this is you, then maybe you have a competitor that is new startup. Oh, we have no legacy code. No, we are faster than you. This is where companies are competing by change. You know, who can change faster? You have the advantage. I'm not saying this is for all. All companies should apply this, but in many businesses or products, often this is one of the key factors. So, and this part of, let me tune back a bit. This part of dynamic comes from, there are many different factors. Pressure to deliver more and also have skills and so on. And the common factor that I see is usually pressure. Pressure from business or whoever is plucking out a date from somewhere that by the 3 months time you need to deliver all these things. This is nothing new, and this has consistently produced a lot of legacy systems that I know. And this dynamic is nothing new. This code is so important, I like to read it out. Equally responsible for the initiation of project. With predefined failure is management that insists upon having fixed commitments from programming personnel prior to the latest understanding of what the commitments are for. Too frequently, management does not realize that in asking the staff for the impossible, the staff will feel the obligation to respond out of respect, fear, or misguided loyalty. Saying no to the boss frequently requires courage, political and psychological wisdom, and business maturity that comes with much experience. This is written from a book back in 1967. Who of you is experiencing this recently? Oh, I've been through many companies, they are very familiar with this, and it seems like we have not learned much since then for those people who are familiar. But no, let's not sidetrack, let's think about what we can do. Based on this vicious cycle dynamic, if we learn how to smell the code, something I call code smells, I'll come back to that later, it indicates, help us to identify or flag out what is bad codes or bad codes more. That itself provides us the opportunity of refactoring. Refactoring can reduce the amount of bad code. Reduce the amount of bad code can reduce the amount of bugs, reduce the time span, reduce the panic, reduce quick hacks, and reduce the amount of bad code. I'm not saying that refactoring is the only way. There are many other ways, like better product discovery, and so on and so forth. But refactoring, I picked this topic on refactoring is also because back in probably 6 years ago, I know about TDD, test-driven development, or unit tests, test automation. I thought it's an excellent idea. Everybody should do it. When I gave some workshops, please do TDD, write a test first. And then you're like, huh? What is unit test? How do I write it? And I teach them about unit tests. Okay, then they realized, and after that, what is refactoring? And they couldn't get the idea, motivations of why do we even have unit tests. So when I try more experiments later, like doing coding dojos, exercises, I realized that if I start off with refactoring, then I'm tackling a smaller problem of a bigger problem. And that seems to work pretty well after more experiments. So therefore, I usually go around in companies talking about refactoring first. So 101, refactoring is the discipline technique, is to improve the design without affecting the external behavior. Examples of refactoring methods are extract method and all those. I will demonstrate that later. I would like to ask, who knows refactoring? In this room? Good. Who has heard of code smells? Pretty good. Who uses code smells to drive refactoring? Good. So probably this talk will have, for those who raise up their hands, this talk may not have a lot of new information to you. Please hang on with it. So when do we refactor? When the code smells. I emphasize this because I've given this talk or similar talks to many places, like in Vietnam, in Taiwan, in Japan. And every time people will raise up their hand, yes, we know refactoring. Who knows code smell? Very little people raise up their hands. So it's like, no, how do you know you are refactoring? No, how do you know when you refactor? So when the code smells. What is code smell? It is an indication. So how does this term code smell comes about? There was a story that Martin Fowler, who wrote the refactoring book with Kent Beck, at that time, they were trying to find, they know about refactoring, but what leads them to start doing abstract method, doing inline variable? And at that time, Kent Beck had a newborn baby. And he was, his grandmother said that, no, if your child smells, there might be a problem. That only might be a problem. So he thought, maybe we can use the word smell to represent that, to drive refactoring. So code smell doesn't mean bad code. It just means there might be, it is an indication there might be a deeper problem. So fast forward, about this demo, this is the code that I used in animation earlier. It is a personalized email. I'm going to share with you a little bit about the behavior of this code. It's written in Java, Spring MVC. This is from Japan, one of the classes I did in Japan. And they created this UI is to send an email. But this email is special because if you put two address in the address field, two email address in the address field, both will receive like it is sent to them personally. So it's not BCC carbon copy. So if you have a contact list, you store a list of contacts like a address book or a contacts, and you have an attribute called name, you can actually, in a subject or body, you can use a variable or attributes, add with a $sign name. When the email address or the recipient address matches with the contact, both person will receive season's greeting, Stanley. Season's greeting, Archie. Simple, right? Okay, this is the behavior. So now, they have been developing this feature subject with attributes, to input the $sign and a body with attributes. They've done that. And the code, they have test drive it. They have tests as well. But it is not ideal. What do you smell first? What is the code smell do you first notice? Yeah, long method, yes. So in this code, a quick overview, you have a mail controller. It depends on the address book service, which is the context. It depends on the mail service to send an email. It depends on the mail info, which is a domain object that is constructed to use by the mail service. And mail send form is the form that from the UI sides will do a binding and then pass it over to the controller. In the mail controller, there is a method called send mail action. So we have code coverage and send mail. Imagine now we are in the development. We have done the 2 item stories on attributes, on subject, body, and we smell that this code it smells bad. So let's try to do some refactoring. Bring up my IntelliJ. I hope I can do this within 20 minutes. Okay, this is the code going to full presentation modes. This is the send mail. Okay, and there are some parameters like mail send form over here. Mail send form, a typical form, very simple form that just binds the fields there. There's some error checking, and then it tries to get an address and tries to pass it, and to check that whether is it valid. In here you have quite some smells. What do you smell here? Sorry? Nested, so conditional complexity. What else? Sorry? Duplication. There are quite a bit of duplication, like this one. Duplication. There are also duplication like this condition and this condition as well. It's a duplicate code. What else? Updated many times, like this one. Is it? Okay. What I'm looking for the name, code smell name. What other names can you identify? What code smell? What is it that you use? That you use something primitive. Primitive obsessions, yes, primitive obsessions. You have a using of body. No, this is controller. This is a web controller. What is a web controller's responsibility? Calling your services, your facades, and navigating. But what are the responsibilities here? Knowing how to validate, knowing how to do error handling, knowing how to construct domain objects. It's pretty smelly here, right? So we'll take some time on doing this. Okay, so first, run the test. This is they did it on Sprint boot, so it's running the whole controller. I think it's setting up the whole servlet environment to run it. And you can see at the bottom, it's a bit unclear, test pass. Yeah, this means the test is passed. I can show you mail controller tests. So there's a series of tests here. I've done a code coverage. It seems to cover all. And so I'm going to start. I may not do, it's never done. I'm going to do as much as the time allows. Look at this. Form, address, trying to split. I think this is from the field, and then trying to split by the colon. So this is trying to say it's addresses. How about let's increase the level of abstraction here and call it get addresses. Okay? Addresses, and this variable is a smell call, temporary variable. And this address, if you go into it, it also smells a little bit of feature what? Feature what? Feature envy. Not as strong, but it doesn't seem like this method belongs to the controller's responsibility. So we are going to move it to the form. And before that, this is using stream of, I can now kind of make it a bit more readable by changing it to use lists. and I ask the code to help me do that, and then make a return, oops, let it, change it to lists, and then I use address.stream instead. Now, this way I can get a code a little bit shorter. And inline this variable. After inline this variable, and I think I can move this method to form.getAddresses. So since it has the information, maybe we can try shifting the responsibility to there. It will be better than leaving the responsibility in the controller. At this point, this statement is trying to check the validity of the email address. This is misleading. You call it smell call uncommunicative names. It's trying to say it's valid, but actually it means if it is invalid. So let's rename it. It's invalid. More importantly, this responsibility doesn't seem to be inside controller. So similarly, I'm going to change it to has invalid recipient's address. Okay. F6 to move temporary variable inline if form has invalid recipient address. I think this makes it a bit better. Let's go down. List mail info. Mail info, what is it? It's a data class, smell. It doesn't have any responsibilities yet. But if mail info, something info, if you call your domain object something info, it may be a bit repetitive or redundant. So for now, I'm going to rename it to just mail. Make it concise. Mail info lists, make it concise, mails. Okay, let's get back to here. Oh, I've been changing quite a bit of code without running the test. So I should run the test. So usually, in my practice, I would do a few refactorings, run the test. If test pass, I'll check in. Yeah. And over 10 minutes, you may see like 5 or even 6 check-ins in the commits. Right, address item, contact, address item, inconsistency. If we are referring address book, well, in the UI it says contact. So let's rename it to contact. It's not really a service, it's just doing the adds, gets. So I just call it DAO. Also change this name to contact. Okay. After I change this to that, I take a look further. Okay. There are quite a bit of duplication over here. Let's see. New mail. This subject, this is a variable that, well, this variable, if you highlight this, I'm not sure, it's not very clear over here. If you highlight the variable, maybe function, yeah, fine. You see that this is kind of repeated in many places. Variables like this tends to create your code quite coupled together. And especially when this block of code contains multiple responsibilities, it is hard to break away the responsibilities if we allow this variable to exist. Since it is coming from a form and form is around, I would make a decision to inline this variable so that in the code itself, it calls it directly. Then, when we do that, we reduce a bit of coupling on that block of code. Next, replace subject. This variable is being used it's kind of being used like collecting information. If it is being replaced, it will do this. Otherwise, it will use the original initialized variable here. Now, I want to make it more straightforward. So one of the ways that I can do this is by introducing duplication. I inline this first, duplicate this, I move this up, and move this inside the loop. When I got this inside the loop, I run the test again. So the two loops with different conditions, if a contact is found, then it will add a mail from, with render the template, replace the subject. If it is not found, then it will also use that variable. But since I've break that coupling, what I can do is I can immediately get subject. Form.getBody. I run the code again. Okay, test pass. And IntelliJ tells me that it's redundant. And since it is only being used once, I can move the declaration closer to the use. Okay? So now we're trying to make the code more cohesive. And there are a few more obstacles here. First is the duplication. Well, if you look at this name, this is like the attribute name. And this application is it's not complete, it's not feature complete yet. So, but there's duplication here. This name attribute seems to be should not be the knowledge inside the controller. It could be somewhere else. I thought it could be somewhere in contact. The contact should know the knowledge of attributes. Attributes, name. Create a constant field, name. Go back. Okay. And then do this, oops. Same thing for here. Same thing for here. Run the test. Test still pass. Right. If you look at this line of code, form get subject contains this attribute, form body contains, this is duplicated once here and also here. It seems to be expressing something. It seems to be expressing whether the template requires to render. Now, if it has that dollar sign, it means that it requires rendering. Let me extract that IntelliJ, thank you. Tell me to identify the duplicates. And then, what do I do next? If you look at this form, smells, feature, and V. Shift, do F6 to move, requires render. I move it there. Reduce a bit of duplication. I also notice there's this duplication here. I use the contact name again. This is to get a subject. This is to do the rendering. So probably I can name it as rendered subject. Okay. So now it reads, we are rendering a subject. And since this seems to be more related to the responsibility in the form, I will move it to the form. Form.rendered subject. Similarly, for here, this is body. Rendered body. Move it. Okay. So now we have a temporary variable here. I'll leave it for now. We haven't run tests for a long time. I should be ashamed of myself. Okay, next. What is the next battle we want to deal with? No, there are still two. It breaks single responsibility principle. Which are the two responsibilities? Creation and this one? Error handling. Yeah. And it is inside this loop. No, when you code it, it's convenient to put everything together. But this makes it hard to change in the future. A new developer may come in and may take maybe 10 minutes or maybe an hour trying to understand what this code is trying to do. Let's try to split it, the responsibilities. How do we split it? I'm going to attempt this way. I'm not saying that this is the best way, but this helps the situation a little bit better. going to create a list of contact and call it contacts collector, new array list. I'm going to collect on the cases of, in this case, I add the contact. Okay. In this case, I'm going to add a new contact that does not have any name. It only has the address and an empty name. Okay. When I do this, no, I'm just adding functionality. There's no code behavioral change at all. And I haven't used that code yet. So following, I'm going to add contact. I'm going to use it. How do I use it? I can do this over here. Here I don't need to use the address anymore. I can use contact.getMailAddress. And when I do this, I remove the creation away from the loop. One small step to split the responsibilities. It is not ideal. I don't really like collector here. No, if you're in Ruby, I guess you have in Ruby on Rails, this will be a simple, it will be a very trivial thing. So now we have managed to come here, and mail's variable itself is only used below. So I can move that closer here. Okay. And then next, what can I do? What can I do? I've run the test. Next, what I do is that I want to know, if you think about controller, should a controller know about how to handle the errors and also the creation? Probably not. This, I have an idea of how to increase the abstraction. Probably call this populate. I want to create a populate method. This populate method will do a couple of things. First, it will create the domain object mails. Second, it will record those errors that comes with it, so that we can handle the error later on in the controller. And currently, this is depending on the contact DAO data access object, which I do not want. So I do a abstract parameter. Okay, thank you. I move this to mail. All right, run the test. So we are not done yet. We are not done yet, and unfortunately, because of time, I think I have to stop here. So eventually, I may think about having later something like I'm going to just has populates error. Then you handle the error here. This is what I intend to do later. But we have run out of time. I'm going to continue with the slides. Otherwise, you won't get tips of how to do better, right? Okay, so what we have here, this is if we have enough time, we'll get into that. From the email form, or the mail form, if you notice that form has increased responsibilities in knowing about templates, behaviors of templates. And later on, I decided to change that email template to the name to email templates, having the responsibilities of has popular error and get a popular error message. Code smells we have been through. These are the code smells. Feature envy, duplicate code, uncommunicative name, and primitive obsessions are the most common top list of code smells I've seen in many of the legacy code. These are the Send email breaks the single responsibilities. So as we try to refactor the code, we also look at design principles to refactor. We did use this field refactorings method. Right. So for those who are new to code smells and you're interested to learn more about refactoring, learn to smell the code. What it means is not just, well, when we say when I say learn to smell the code, I meant able to identify what is the name of the smell. And those smells are, if you look in a broader picture, smells are kind of an anti-pattern. It's anti-patterns that suggest that there might be a problem. So learn to smell that, learn the name so that you can communicate better with other people. Design principles are very useful and yet not commonly known. Single responsibility, high cohesion, low coupling. When you have a choice to make between cohesion or coupling, go for cohesion. Yeah. There can be a separate talk about why that is. We talk about refactor from design principles. A good book that you can take a reference is Refactoring to Patterns. It suggests on the kind of smells that you have and what kind of pattern could you refactor to, given the problems on the context you have. Very important, as you refactor, do not add new functionality that will break the tests or break the build. This relates to Michael Feather said, programming is the art of doing one thing at a time. So to take a recap, refactoring, why do we refactor? Because we want to make it easier to change later. Yeah. When you are in a large project or product, usually you do not refactor to imagine that in the future that you need it. Usually not that. What I suggest is that when you know in your product backlog, on your backlog requirements, that upcoming items are something that is going to happen, spend a bit of time to make that area a bit easier to change when you come to that, before you come to that. If you probably have noticed that refactoring is a design technique. It's a way to design software. And how do we do it? When do we do it? Code smells. Essential skills, able to explain the code with design principles, identify code smells, refactor manually through IDE, able to show it to others is important. Familiar with working with unit tests or integration tests, and also with the functionality that you are changing. Lots of practice. There are many small examples, katas, that you can try it. This katas has unit tests along with it so that you can change a bit, run it. And as you do it, ask your colleagues or mentors or some other people to review. What do you think about this code? Get feedback from them. One of the ways to learn is also teaching it. When you teach it, you need to know the topic very well. This creates the reinforce that you need to learn better on that subject. I've done a lot of experiments on this. You can talk to me later. Like I do go to companies and go in their code base and create a one-day refactoring workshop by looking at the code base, identify the code smells, extract those code smells as exercises, and then in the workshop, okay, welcome. First exercise, remove duplicate code. Please remove magic number. Please remove feature envy. And then see how people respond, and gradually you'll learn about refactoring. When you teach people or even yourself learn, be aware of the stages of competence of how you learn. There are many different models to it. This is a simple way of viewing it. At the beginning, we are unconscious incompetence. So if you try to sell this idea, refactoring, to maybe graduates, most of the time they probably do not understand or do not know why you want to do that. Ask them to write tests, they probably don't understand. Why? Because it is only if you've been thrown by companies with legacy code, monster classes and all that, and you work with it, then you realize that to have a title feedback is a good idea. So in the past, I make a mistake. I sell this idea to young people and then, or graduates, and then they're like, why do I want to do this? What had happened? I was frustrated at the time. I thought, no, these are resistance, but not really. They haven't been through the experience that I've been through, so first have not been able to appreciate the motivations of it. They are probably at unconscious incompetence. So until they go through some trainings where you give some simulations, getting them into situations and building motivations for that, then they may realize that, I know about this refactoring, but I do not know how to do it yet. Conscious incompetence. After sometimes they try, they practice it, they are conscious about doing refactoring, but sometimes it is still pretty hard. When should we extract method? When should we inline variable? How much is enough? Then after some time, after getting feedback from many people, from experts and other people, then he may be demoing this to other people. And then when other people see it, it's like, wow, how do you do this? And then he may say, just like that. He may be at unconscious competence. And when you are at unconscious competence, you're not aware about your competence, sometimes it is a trap to teach other people, because in the past, as a software engineer, I'm good at something, I teach other people, I assume that they know, I assume that they know how to get there. But there is a gap between the knowledge. So I need to step myself back down to where they are and then give them a bit of challenge. Otherwise, the challenge is too far for them. Very important, please find a mentor, review the code with the others, get feedback so that you improve. Be open-minded, be reflective with how you code. And now with this, a few quotes. Experienced programmers do not write infinitely complex code, they write code that is blindly simple. There are plenty of books. I put my slides on the net. You can refer to this later. And last words from Kent Beck. He recently tweeted this, which I didn't think about it before. It's an interesting perspective, that refactoring is actually an exercise in kindness. You are doing it for other people so that they can change the code easier. I don't assume I know everything. If you have better ways of dealing with reducing the cost of change or dealing with situations like this, please feel free to come and talk to me. I'd like to find out more from you. Thank you very much. Do we have any time for questions? Yes? Okay. We have, I guess, one question. Have any one question to ask? No? Then thank you.